Welcome back to the Youtini Show, your one-stop shop for all things going on in Star Wars. I am Eric here tonight with Corey and Wes. We missed you last week. It's our first show of June, so happy Pride to everybody that's been celebrating so far. We got a great show for you tonight because Starfighter has found its second star. Mark Hamill says that Star Wars should focus on the future. Disney apparently told Tony Gilroy that streaming is dead, and we look ahead to the finale of The High Republic. But to get us started tonight, our biggest story takes us to the big screen, as what started as a rumor very quickly became confirmed, as the next Star Wars star was revealed first by noted leaker Jeff Snyder, and it was quickly followed by Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and everyone else. Mia Goth of A24's X, Pearl, Maxine, and more is set to star alongside Ryan Gosling in Sean Levy's Star Wars Starfighter. Well, the role is technically undefined right now. We do have some ideas about who she may be playing and who was offered the role first. But before we get into that, what was your initial reaction to this news, fellas?
Well, my initial reaction was, I have no idea who that is.
Very fair, very fair.
Same. I'm the same way. But because I don't know who it is, that is very Star Wars-like. I hope that they create these new bustling characters. So we have, and I hope that Star Wars is not like entrenched in their only like movie accolades. Like, oh, that's the Star Wars person. That's the Star Wars person. But if they do a good job, then, you know, that might be the way it goes. So I get it.
Exactly. It's interesting because when it first came up, I was like, oh, Mia Goth. Because I've heard of her A24 work and some of her like more indie things, but then I realized I don't think I've actually seen any of them, but I've just like followed along. I know JG on our team, who's filled in on plenty of shows over the last couple months, is a big fan of the X and Pearl trilogy. I know a lot of folks like her work on it, and I did see that she is gonna be one of the bigger stars probably before Starfighter comes out, because this fall she's going to be in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein with other Star Wars alum Oscar Isaac. And then next year, she's joining, I believe, last count, 848 other members of Hollywood in Nolan's The Odyssey movie that he's coming out with, that like Matt Damon and Tom Holland and Zendaya and all them. She's going to be in that. So I like this because it feels like they signed her. Like, it's like buying a stock right before you know it's going to explode. They're like, we know next year we're going to have to pay her a lot more.
That's a good point.
After those movies come out. So it's like we're going to lock in the rate. But I'm excited about it. I'm glad we're getting some news. I'm glad this was confirmed too. Like, I saw the leak, and, you know, in Snyder says a lot of stuff. It's usually pretty reputable, but, you know, especially with casting, we've been down this road too many times before. But I was shocked at the fact that it seemed like Gizmodo, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, like had Variety, like had these articles like ready to go. So, yeah, it seems very real.
It certainly seems like this movie is starting to become real now. Like, it's starting to feel like it's becoming real. Like, I know they kind of announced, they did announce it formally, I guess, at Celebration. It was just such a strange announcement. I feel like it was like, Sean Levy's film. Oh yeah, Ryan Gosling's here. Like, it was very weird. At Celebration, how that all kind of played out. So it's kind of cool to see this movie is actually starting to come together. I'm all for brand new characters. I know A24 has got like a cult following almost, like in the movie community. So I welcome new folks. Like Wes, I always like it when they bring on like unknowns. That's my favorite way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was so cool that Daisy Ridley's basically first job out of drama school was Rey, and like we got to see her do that. And I wonder if this is gonna bring any like the film bros that are like don't like franchise entertainment as much, that are like, hey, it's, you know, Mia Goth, you've logged her films on Letterboxd, like, you know what she's like in these small indie darlings. Maybe they'll actually give it a shot to kind of connect those. And one thing I did like about this, though, the Hollywood Reporter kind of broke a second part of news. They said, quote, details on the project are scant, but it does involve Gosling playing a character that must protect a young charge against evil pursuers. Goth will play one of the pursuers. I believe another outlet said that it's his nephew he might be protecting. So I wanted to get your guys' kind of idea on this, because I got to be honest, I read that and I'm like, oh, it's Mandalorian again. It is. We're going to protect a young kid from pirates or something. And how does that strike you just on face value? Because, yeah, it's Mandalorian, but that's kind of very Star Wars-y, protecting young kids from evildoers. Like, Does that affect you at all? Does that move the needle in any way?
Not really.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
For me, it's just like that's so vague. That's the most vague thing they could possibly have. I feel like the takeaway though is like, are they saying that Goth is playing a villain?
Yes.
Oh, that's pretty what they're saying, right?
Yep.
That's pretty interesting.
She's the leader of these pursuers. I'm going to pirate gang in my head just because I'm like, oh, is he a Starfighter pilot? And they're all chasing each other through space on a high intensity like pirates v pilot space race, which sounds amazing. I'll be honest as I say it.
Does this take place in the New Republic?
Yes, 5 years. Right? 5 years post Rise of Skywalker.
So this is kind of like replacing a little bit the Walker Texas Ranger. What was it going to be? What was that show called?
Oh my gosh.
The
something the New Republic. What's it called?
Rangers of the New Republic.
Rangers, yeah.
Yeah,
Rangers of the New Republic.
In like the later way. So maybe he was.
Yeah, I told you it was Walker Texas Ranger.
Walker Texas Ranger.
Dude, Wes, I guarantee you that you have watched. I guarantee you that Wes has watched.
Oh, for sure, dude.
Crap out of Walker Texas Ranger.
No question.
That's why we were wearing Wranglers in high school. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris. The show was great. I used to watch it with my dad all the time.
Dude,
it was like his
USA
favorite
every
show.
day.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think that could be cool though. I like the idea. Maybe he was a New Republic Ranger during Mando times and then retired during the sequel trilogy or whatever. And now 5 years later, he's like, you know what I love? I love keeping a kid out of danger story and they make you a better person. But I also love a guy who's like, I got to come out of retirement. I didn't think I had one more in me, one more adventure. Like that's very Star Wars, you know?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
I think that could be fun. I want her to do really cool Starfighter moves. I want really big space battles in space, in atmosphere. And I want her to have some cool twisted fun with it. Yes. Do the Treasure Planet of it all. That's true.
We already got Treasure Planet. Yeah, I don't know. Like with that does ring a lot of bells with Skeleton Crew. So I don't know.
Yeah. Which was great.
To be something unique and original. I feel like I'm really hoping for more of the what was her name? The Wonder Woman, Jesus, director, Patty Jenkins.
Patty Jenkins.
I think that's what I actually want. Actually, is a little more like Top Gun, Starfighter type of stuff like that. Yeah. But that doesn't sound like this. But I don't know. Maybe that is this. I don't know. We don't know. We literally know nothing about this film. It's not real yet. This movie doesn't exist. To be clear,
absolutely not. No, I think there's something fun about There's
plenty of time for it to be canceled still.
That's eye on the target. Target, which is just release.
Exactly.
Yeah, could they incorporate pieces of Skeleton Crew in this? I mean, they could essentially do it anywhere, but I mean, like just having a grown up characters from Skeleton Crew in this movie. I mean, just as a nod, it didn't have to be part of the movie. It just could be like something they pass over. But that makes me think like if they wanted to bring some type of familiarity with Star Wars fans that are super Star Wars fans that watch absolutely everything. Hey, I know who that is, and they don't have to ruin the story. They just have somebody be a cameo or something.
He did say Levy did say on stage that that this was not going to be that kind of movie. Like that this was going to be an entirely original story. Like it's not going to be full of cameos. It's not going to be characters we're familiar with. I mean, he did say.
Oh, so no, you just had to say no. That's it.
Yeah, he just said everything you said, Wes. As Luke would say, everything you just said is wrong. But also, Levy does have experience with like putting kids in peril. Like Stranger Things is very real danger for young characters. You know what I mean? Like he's been involved with that for years. Did you guys see the Adam Project? The one that he did with Ryan Reynolds.
I love that movie. The movie was great.
I saw it too. And that's literally him taking a young kid away from danger, right? So like it's himself, but like I think there's definitely his wheelhouse has that. And I like the fact of Mia Goth getting to be a villain. She's got that range of like creepiness from the A24 things. But this role, they did confirm this as well. I believe it was a Variety. This was the role that was offered to Mikey Madison, who just won the Oscar for Honora, who reportedly turned it down just due to contract issues. It sounds like, she just won the Oscar, so her price probably went up a bit. I don't know. I think I'd put a little bit of money in this. Neither one of you have seen it, Nora. Is that right?
No.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, great. So it's really good. She absolutely deserved the Oscar, and I want to know, like, in 30 years, the conversation that happened between them, because I feel like if you're young, like she is, she's in her 20s, and like the year after you win your first Oscar, you kind of gotta pick your first big project you're gonna do right after. So maybe, yeah, there's a money issue, but also, does she want to go right into a brand new Star Wars project before doing something with like a Scorsese or like,
yeah, it could be risky.
Does she want to pick a director? Yeah. So I'm excited to see what the character is like, and then see if like, oh, would Mikey Madison have like done that differently? Like, would that have been interesting? But I don't know. I'm glad we have a second person. I'm glad we're gonna have years to think about this, because the more names we get, the less fake it is. Yeah. I think, as Corey was saying, like, all these people are in it. I think that makes it more likely that it won't get canceled. So
is this the one we have a date for again?
Yes. May 28th, 2027.
27. Okay. This is sooner than it seems.
So I think it'll film this fall. I think they were saying is the plan. So really, they probably have more of a cast, to be perfectly honest, by this point.
By now.
Yeah. So they'll have something fun with that. I'm sure that more people will be leaked as time goes on. But we're gonna get Mandalorian and Grogu news pretty hardcore, probably coming into the fall, winter.
True.
So they're gonna as we all know, Star Wars has a really tough time promoting two things at once. So I would doubt we see too much of Mia Goth until we're much closer to that release date. So keep your eyes posted, keep your eyes peeled, and keep your ears to the ground while we keep you posted. There we go. Yeah, that totally worked. That's what that's supposed to sound like, and we will let you know what's going on. Of course, not only with Starfighter, but with everything coming down the pipeline. But before we go too much further, we want to take a quick second to let you know that this episode is brought to you tonight by the United, the official Youtini community. Now, by joining the United, you'll not only receive ad-free shows and exclusive merch drops, you'll also get unlimited access to our Discord full of enthusiastic Star Wars fans that want nothing more than to welcome you and make you spend your money on Star Wars Unlimited. Filled with daily conversations, polls, and monthly events, the United is powered by a community of intentional positivity, and that makes it the best place for you to celebrate your fandom and engage with fans who love everything you do the way that you do. Now, by heading to youtini.com/community, you can sign up for a whole year of the United and save 15% when you use code YOUTINISHOW. That's one word, code YOUTINISHOW, for 15% off your first year of the United. So head on over now and get signed up. Check out our amazing event to connect with your favorite podcast hosts. And now, back to the show. Now, speaking of the big screen, one of our biggest legends says it's time for that screen to reflect some newer talent, like Mia Goth, perhaps. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself, has been on a press tour for his new film, The Life of Chuck, which looks incredible. And while chatting with Comic Book, he spoke about his gratitude to George Lucas for giving him his career, but also admitted that he thinks it's time for Star Wars to focus on the future and all the new characters. So, guys, let me ask you two questions here. First, do you think that completely moving away from legacy characters like Han, Luke, and Leia is the right move? And second, do you think that's actually the way we're headed?
To completely move away from the legacy characters?
Completely. Mark Hamill says, focus on the new characters. I had my time. He says, go forward.
Is there any mention of them at all in the movies? Just completely take them out, and you're talking about they're not mentioned at all.
As of now,
dead.
Han, Luke, Leia. They're all dead fully. And Luke, Mark actually did say also in the interview. He says, "Well, I left my robe behind, and I don't want to come back as a naked Force ghost because he's Mark Hamill and he's got to get the last laugh." But yeah, I mean, it's every single main film project right now is past Rise of Skywalker, but Maul Shadow Lord is Clone Wars right after the Clone Wars, so like maybe young versions, but probably not. But we really don't have anything confirmed. I don't know. Is that what's happening?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to use them almost as like fable, or as in history that you bring up maybe once every few years, but like it's not something that they're like pursuing as in we have to do what Han, Luke, and Leia set out to do 10 years ago. Like they don't. I think that steering in a new direction is a right move to make new characters. You need to try to make a new Han, Luke, and Leia, right? So
lean into it.
Yeah, and you have a whole new audience. Obviously, every generation there's going to be a new audience. So I think it's a smart move if they can actually create those characters that people want to see. If they pull it off, then they hit a home. Hopefully, they hit a home run. But I mean, shit, you can hit a triple. Why not?
Yeah, I know.
You get on base.
Yeah, you get on base.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know. I mean, we don't really have any other media we can really look to for this. I feel like how to handle this, right? I mean, we often talk about Marvel as being the only other real franchise that's even close to Star Wars. And like Marvel also has not been able to successfully move forward past the Avengers.
I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is coming back to be Doctor Doom, which I'm excited about, but most people hate. So I mean, it seems like it's very hard.
I do think that Fantastic Four and going that direction is an opportunity, maybe to break out of that
himself.
Yep.
Did Star Trek ever do it with Captain Kirk? Did they just completely forget about Captain Kirk and then they start over?
They did bring back Shatner a couple times.
No way.
Bring back.
And the new movie started a recasting of Captain Kirk. That was Chris Pine, so 3 movies. So no, Wes, I guess that's a great question. No, they didn't.
Okay.
They moved away for a little while.
Sounds like something Star Trek would do. Of course.
With like Captain Picard and all that stuff.
There is Next Gen and Voyager. Next Generation and all that stuff for sure.
Oh, it was literally called The Next Generation. Like,
that's true. That's true. And they bring him back.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, should they do that? Yeah, I think they have to. I mean, are fans going to pay for it? I don't think so for a long time. Like, it would have to be it would have to be a really long-term commitment, I feel like. And I just don't know that they're capable of doing that. The new model of Hollywood, the investor-focused model of Hollywood, I don't know can really allow a franchise like Marvel or Star Wars to like reinvent the wheel. I don't think it allows them to do that because like you have movies like Solo, a Rey film, Starfighter, like things like this, new stuff that's coming out that might not. I don't think these movies are going to make what The Force Awakens made, right? I just don't think that's ever going to happen. So it's going to be hard to kind of come back from that. Like you have these big cultural moments, I feel like in movie making, like where no Star Wars has been made for a really long time. So like everyone's going to go see the new Star Wars movie. Yeah. But we can't repeat that again, right?
Yeah.
Like, because now they want to print money every year, right? They don't want to, let's just pause everything for a decade and then we'll make a new Star Wars movie and make $1 bazillion, right? Like, so they're not going to do that. So,
yeah. Well, I think you nail it right there is that I think it's all about managing expectations, but financially purely. I think that the idea of The Force Awakens when it came out, obviously it made a ton of money, just like The Phantom Menace. The first movie of a trilogy is going to get Star Wars fans super, super excited. And also, I mean, come on. I remember where I was when I watched that trailer and Harrison Ford runs into the Falcon and says, "Chewie, we're home." Come on. That is nostalgia, but it was perfect. And I think, like, you're not going to make $2 billion, and that's okay. Yeah. But for the stories themselves, I mean, we just got done with Andor, which a lot of us say is the best Star Wars there's ever been. And that was still a character from 10 years ago. In Rogue, sure, but it's not a Luke. But it is a character that then became that important. So I think the question is less so, do we get Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford to do more Star Wars? And, like, can we not put Luke at the end of a Mandalorian episode or a Book of Boba Fett episode? Because I think that's the stuff that I think is lessening those other projects. And what Andor avoided so nicely was that kind of thing. And I think having the Rey film, we don't need Luke in a Force vision. Like, he had his final Force vision. Let that go. Don't give in to that temptation to have Mark Hamill come back and say, actually, one more thing. And I think that's what Mark is
I want them to stop. I do want them to stop doing that. I agree with what Mark's saying, that I would like for them just to kind of move on from Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill. I do want them to do that. Yep. Like, I don't really want to see those guys in more Star Wars, to be honest. Now, does part of me want some kind of Luke training a Jedi Order series and recast Mark Hamill? Kinda, yeah. I mean, part of me still does kind of want that. I mean, I think that would be fun and interesting, and we still have so much. We still have the gigantic gap between Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi that needs to be filled. Like, we're not really filling it with Mandalorian. Like, we're kind of filling it, but this whole Imperial Remnant is kind of interesting, I guess. But like,
yeah, the comics have just started it. Like, the new Marvel series is right after Return of the Jedi, but that's gonna be baby steps. Like, there's 15 years. You know, like we got so much time, and I want the books. I think that's my perfect thing. Is like the books. We're finishing the High Republic, which we'll talk about here in a bit. We're gonna end this big, huge initiative for Luke. Write that in a book. There are like I had a buddy, my buddy Devin. Shout out if you're listening, man. He did my wedding, and he's actually just gonna start getting into Star Wars books. He's gonna start his Youtini journey, and he was like, "Okay, what I really want is Luke," and I'm like, well, in canon, that's a little tougher than you might think. And I'm like, I think we're really due for some really good Luke books. Like, I want to see him get me inside his inner monologue in a novel of him flying his X-Wing to Octo and sinking it after Ben. Like, that's a really big moment. Like, let that live. Let me see his first couple of years in exile. Like, you like write that out, do that kind of stuff. And I think that medium is really rich for that. I do think, though, like you guys kind of mentioned there, Mandalorian's not doing it. We got to get out of the Mandoverse stuff because I think they're just so afraid to touch anything until that chapter is closed. And then I think that can be the books, and then visually we can just go forward.
I don't know that Filoni is capable of closing the chapters. The problem, he just like it's just they love these characters too much. They're his babies, and like I don't know if
you might not be wrong.
I don't know it. And actually, speaking of the future, speaking of Filoni, I would like to maybe briefly chat about like some of the rumors this week about like Filoni and Carrie Beck. Somebody mentioned this in our chat actually at the very beginning of the show.
Yep.
And we were not. I don't think we were planning to talk about it much, right? Like, but it's all rumors, but it does come. It's a speculatory article from the Hollywood Reporter. Is where it came from, right? Hollywood Reporter.
Yeah, it says Beck and Filoni are the top two, which we've kind of known and. There's man, the he said she said's now going behind the scenes are crazy because some people are like
kind of getting crazy. The title of this article is fantastic, actually, from the Hollywood Reporter. It's called "Inside Hollywood Succession Wars."
Yeah,
and it's got a really cool cover. I know, dude. It's got a really cool image with look at it. Look at this. Look at the image. Yeah, it looks a crazy article. Yeah. It's very speculatory. Hollywood Reporter does do this often. So there's not that much to say in it, but like this is like renewed chats. This one feels fairly credible in some ways that maybe we've been saying for years that Filoni is probably the, most likely person. If they do want to stick with this, we're going to put some faith in George's vision, right? Like they sort of trusted, that's why Kathleen Kennedy is in this position. I mean, he wouldn't agree to sell to Disney unless they put her in charge. And, freaking Filoni is Dave's like protege. Like, I mean, the guy knows everything he knows about movie making in Star Wars because of Lucas. Every time he gets on stage, like I hear new stories. I can't believe he still has new stories after he told this amazing story at Celebration about filming my favorite episode. He referenced landing at Point Rain in the in one of the panels that we went to.
Awesome.
Talk about how like they showed George the preview of that episode and like he didn't really like it, so he's like, this is what I want you to do, and he pulled all this like fighter pilot footage from like actual footage from World War II and like fighter pilots, like this is what we have to make the ship do. It needs to move like this airplane moves. And they reshot the whole thing. It's been a ton of money on just the opening of that episode, and that's why it's literally the beginning of the good Clone Wars in my opinion. But I don't know, Filoni seems like the obvious person in a lot of ways. We've talked about in the past that like he's also the kind of creative guy. Do you want the creative guy at the head of the business?
Well, it's tough because also like the person that's been alongside him as a producer and all these is Carrie Beck. Like she it seems like he's been the one that's been the lore guy that has been the creative stuff, and Carrie Beck is like she's been creating Clone Wars. She worked on Rebels, worked on Bad Batch even more than Dave did. Yeah, and it's like, and it's interesting because if Dave wants to be more of a director, you can't. Kathleen Kennedy's not a director, right? She's not on set making things. So if he wants to keep making things, that's not a job he's gonna want. Like if Carrie wants to be the person in charge, kind of like making the hats, like what Kathy does, there's something.
That's why that's why this is kind of interesting, because like the rumor is that they're co-leads, which is very strange in my opinion.
I don't think they could ever do that. There's a president and there's a vice president. I don't think they're. Well, I mean,
maybe. I don't know.
But even internally, it's like, well, what if Dave tells me one thing and Carrie tells me one thing? What do I do? You know?
Yeah.
It is. We will never know the full story, but I will absolutely buy the book. Whoever writes it afterwards, I'm sure of like, this is what really happened. You know?
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't. Yeah, he leaves. You know?
It is interesting thinking about moving forward, because like every single episode, I feel like we're having the same conversation about.
We're on a precipice.
What is the next cliff? What's the next big thing? I don't know. It feels like we're getting closer and closer. The actors are almost too old now. They were basically too old when we did the sequel trilogy, right?
Yeah, and I think that's why, like, again,
and it proved it. I mean, freaking Carrie Fisher died in the middle of
like literally.
Like that is the. I don't know. I think we do have to move on. They're starting to explore recasting now, though. Like successfully with Andor, and I don't know.
I think it's great. I
think
I'm okay with both. I guess I feel in my
done
heart.
well.
Like I don't. New
characters are great, but they should tie into the old story somehow, or some of the old planets, old situations. But having the new characters there as main characters, and then like I said, the familiarity with these old situations where they'd learned from past, I don't know, wars, battles, conflicts, whatever. But the planets will always be there. I mean, essentially, until there's another Starkiller base or whatever.
Wes, I don't know if you've seen Star Wars. The planets are
they won't always
not
be there.
Always there. The first movie ever, Alderaan is not there.
We didn't get to go there very much.
It's kind of a major plot point.
Oh, okay.
Osmium Prime, my guy.
Remember, you just had to say no. No. But yeah, I mean, there's multiple conflict situations, like worlds that they can go to, that brings you back to, oh, that's old Star Wars. Now I know where we're at, and I can kind of get behind these characters, hopefully. But like you said, Corey, I mean, you don't have a decade to be able to like build up these characters. You have to do it every year. That's kind of hard to ask in the present time, I think.
And I think we're following the auteurs too, because like we're really at a place where Star Wars is almost aimless, yet we also have a bunch of projects that are all after Episode 9 on the docket. We just got done with the best received project in the history, which was about no legacy characters and made by a single visionary, and we might have a changing of the guard. Like there's a path where this goes really right. I think like we got a lot of goodwill with quality. We got a lot of cohesion that could possibly happen at the right time. That Maul series is going to come and kind of be a mixture of the worlds and guarantee you an animation boom. Like, there's definitely a light that you can go to right now, and it all works.
Yeah.
And we'll see what it is.
Yeah, I mean, this is similar to, I make the analogy with my patients in the hospital a lot, actually, because medicine is so complicated. And when people come to the hospital, they're so sick that, like, you can't just be, you oftentimes in the chronically ill cannot just say, you have this one problem. This is the only problem you have, and I'm only going to treat that one problem. Because really what happens is they get sick and their one problem affects all their other problems, right? So, and then it becomes harder to tell which came first, chicken or the egg, right? Like, is it one of the other problems the main thing? Is the pneumonia the main thing? So I often make the analogy with patients, like when you're really, really sick, we don't have a clear target. So we just throw a handful of darts and hope we hit the target. And like, it does feel kind of like that is where we're at with Star Wars right now, is we're just throwing a handful of darts and we're going to see what hits the target. With all these new movies, We've tested the streaming thing. I know we're going to talk about that in a moment. We've tested, like, we're about to test what happens when you go from a streaming project to a film, which is crazy and never been done before. Like, really.
Yeah.
That's going to be an interesting target. We have a popular character from the sequel trilogy with Rey. Allegedly, the Rey film is going to happen. Yep. We have this completely independent thing with, like the Starfighter film. So there's a lot of shit coming down the pipeline. Right?
Yeah.
And hopefully some of it's some good shit, right?
Yeah.
That's what we really hope.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess Dave's film kind of fits in there nicely too. Dave's film in a lot of ways feels kind of like a saga film to me, right? That it's like
Dave's film feels like the most stakes that have been on a film maybe since
it
Phantom
does.
Menace, of like
it does, which is why I say
ground.
Exactly, because we're leading up from Clone Wars and Rebels, and basically Dave's entire career can culminate in a film if that's the story they choose to tell with it, like the end of the Thrawn story.
I'm
like,
nervous hearing that. I can't imagine how he sleeps, honestly.
Yeah, I know. Which is like that's different. That's another target too, right? That's like the long game target. Does the long game actually pay off, right? Like, can we do all this long storytelling to build up to an Avengers like experience, right?
Yep.
So we're trying lots of new things right now, and I don't know. The problem is like they can see the targets that they're throwing them at, but we can't see them because they're so secretive about how they make the decisions on how to do things. We have no idea what streaming has meant. We have no idea if that has been like successful or not. We have no idea like was Andor an amazingly successful show? We don't really know. Like, even when we look at graphs and stuff, it's all fairly speculative. So like, we just don't know what, like, are they just going to go with money? Are they going to go with prestige? Are they going to go with profit? Are they going to go with the number of people that went to the opening weekend? Like, how are they going to deem like these projects to be successful or not? Because it's really easy to not have clear like goals like for these films, because that is the ultimate problem. Is if you don't know how you're going to define success, then how the hell do you know if it's successful or not? I don't know.
Exactly. Well, you know what? We keep talking around it. Let's add this to the conversation here, because we are talking big screen. Let us take a trip now officially to the small screen, because if y'all didn't know, our favorite Star Wars interview subject, Tony Gilroy, has been on what feels like a world tour talking about the second season of Andor. But a particular clip from his time at the ATX Television Festival started circulating last week regarding our favorite Andor topic, the money. Now, according to Gilroy, when he approached Disney about the budget for season 2, they told him, quote, "Streaming is dead. We don't have the money we had before." Now, we know that eventually he did end up getting the full budget that he needed, but let's just add this to the conversation. What do we think about what is possibly Tony Gilroy's most blunt interview answer of all time? Because I can't believe he said this. I'm going to be straight up. That he admitted that's what they said.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, when are they gonna when is somebody gonna call Tony and be like, "Listen, you're not allowed to do any more interviews"?
Dude, what does he have to lose? He's done.
That's nothing. He has nothing now. It's just like, I mean, the guy just gets more and more crazy. I mean, I don't know. That's whose book I want to read. I want to read freaking Tony Gilroy's book, because he'll just tell us everything. He'd be like, "Listen, Bob Iger sat me down in his office and told me that I could eat his unborn child if I wanted to, as long as it made him a bunch of money." Like, we don't know, like, what the heck this guy was going to say next. Every single time he talks, he says. They
told
me
I had $36 million. I took a pen and I added one more zero, and they said, "Fine."
No one noticed. No one noticed.
Yeah.
Like, the accounting office called me a year into filming, was like, "Hey, I think we made an accounting error by $300 million."
I don't think so.
Yeah. So what did he mean by streaming? Is we don't have the money we had before? Does that mean that they're just not getting the same revenue from people that are staying home, like if it was through the pandemic and watching and using? They just had they got the revenue from everybody subscribing to literally like every streaming service. In this case, Disney. Everybody had Disney Plus when it came out. The marketing campaign for Disney Plus before it came out was fantastic. I bought 3 years immediately.
We all did.
Yeah, we all did.
They had a 3-year funding cushion, and I think, again, we can never know exactly the numbers of anything, but I think it's very interesting, because when I heard Tony talk about this, I started to do the timeline in my head. Because we all know Andor was supposed to come out last year, and then the actor strike happened. There's some COVID issues, like, right before they started filming. So this conversation he's talking about probably happened somewhere around 2021, 2022. Like, somewhere in that area when they're talking about making it. This is 3 years ago, and I don't think I'm very brave to say streaming has only gone down since in the last 3 years as far as money goes. Like, people are going back to the movie theaters now in record-setting amounts. Like, we just had the biggest Memorial Day weekend ever at the theaters. We're getting billion-dollar movies. Like, we're properly back. And then I was like, well, the only live-action Star Wars show we have on the docket right now is Ahsoka Season 2. And we have that got announced last year. So I think we've gone since the Skeleton Crew or the Acolyte Skeleton Crew announcement of a new show. Like, we've not heard about a new live action Star Wars show year and a half.
That's true.
Something like around the time that was Tony Gilroy. Did he get the last of the money? And then they're like, cut everything off. Everything we've announced, we got to make. But did they realize 3 years ago that they needed to stop? And we're just now seeing, we're kind of out of stuff now.
Maybe. I mean, certainly a possibility. I mean,
maybe they just don't do it as often. I remember when shows like would air like on NBC, CBS, whatever. There would be a series that would start, but it wasn't as like it wouldn't be every like 4 or 5 months a new show would come out. I mean, they just don't do it as often. Maybe once a year you have something come out.
Yeah.
But I get it. I mean, you got to use some of that budget, some of that money for those big time movies that you want to see in the theaters, and you can't do both. You definitely can't.
And they make
do
you
both.
money. I mean,
I just really wish,
and that's like very easy trackable money.
Right.
I just really wish that we could like interview somebody who has like worked like very closely with one of the streaming services for like a couple years and just be like, explain to us the business of streaming, because like it is so easy for us to speculate and think about it in our minds how that business model works, but you can just really come at it from so many different angles that it's really hard to really explain what it actually works, because how are they earning money with streaming, frankly? Like,
well, they're not. I think that's what we're realizing. Is that
I know.
Adding ads, and that's why they're adding
like
every year it goes up. Like,
what is the model? Like, why would they spend so much money on Andor? Are they just hoping that people that are not already subscribed to like Disney Plus are gonna rush and subscribe like for the
that's it
little $15 a month? I mean, that's like less than
and they're hoping you forget. They're hoping you forget you have it, and you just keep over and over and over again.
That's why, was it Rocket Money or whatever exists to stop
I'm sure they hate Rocket Money.
Not a sponsor. Not a sponsor.
Yeah, they hate that.
Yeah, I think that streaming was made, it seems, on the back of like things like House of Cards on Netflix. Remember that, like back in the day, like these dramas that were in a few locations, cost about as much as an NBC procedural, but you could get them quickly.
Well, that used to be the streaming wars. Was like which streaming service can gather the most popular shows that everybody wants to watch.
Well, it started with HBO. Showtime, they had the best movies.
Exactly.
And
that was
back in the day. Yeah, then they started with TV shows, which was something completely new.
It's how you fund it.
Yeah.
Like, we have The Office on Netflix, and because we have The Office, enough people buy it for a year because they're in college and burnt out that we can then afford to make a movie. We can make Stranger Things because you're watching Parks and Rec at 4 a.m. Like,
but something happened in the last decade, though, that the focus became less about let's get the popular show and put it on our streaming platform to let's produce the original show to keep people on our streaming platform. And that is when things got a little crazy.
Yes.
And
they had to keep going bigger and bigger, especially when movies shut off. They're like, no, your movies are here. What if your movies were on your TV?
I know. And now it's just getting worse and worse. I am genuinely subscribed to, I think, 5 different streaming services right now.
There's so many. There's so
ridiculous
many now.
Because I want to watch one show on one streaming service. That's how they get you, right? Yep. I'm subscribed right now to Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Peacock. We just subscribed to Peacock for a minute so we can watch Traitors. It's really fun. I'm subscribed to Paramount Plus because Survivor's on Paramount Plus. Like, what the hell? And Apple TV. That's 6. I think I counted 6. Six.
And do you watch maybe 1 to 2 per service, probably?
Yep. A week, probably. Yeah. Like there certainly are weeks that go by where I don't watch one. Like, there's not an active Survivor right now, so I should probably cancel that for a month or 2, right?
Yeah.
And I usually do that. I turn them off and on all the time. But like, even when I turn them off, it's rare that I go very long with them turned off because somebody recommends a show and you have to freaking subscribe, and then you're stuck with it for a month. Like, so I mean, I get it, but the streaming wars is just, God, it's so tedious. I don't want to see all the other crap on the streaming service that I don't care about. Like,
well, I have a big theory as to why this is no longer working. And yes, it's because there are folks like Corey that have way too many subscriptions that are sick of it and they're done with it. So every Star Wars fan owns all the movies on Blu-ray. We don't need to have a button that we can click to watch Return of the Jedi. We have it. And I think that will now.
That's your theory.
But do we have a Blu-ray player?
This is the preview into my theory.
Okay.
My theory as to why streaming is actually dead and why they said this to Tony Gilroy is because during COVID, a ton of people suddenly became content creators and short form content on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And now people that used to stream and watch Netflix and scroll through Disney Plus at night are scrolling on their phones for free with content that, I'll be honest, depending on who you follow, is sometimes on par with some of the stuff that you're seeing on these platforms. And it's free. Again, it's your phone. It's not free. But like in our minds, right? Like all these people now, that is where the money is. The content creators and the influencers are the people that the money is going to. So instead of paying for long form streaming things on these services that you have to make sure you watch at a certain time and they're now getting all interconnected, and did I follow on this? You can click the TikTok button and get 7 hours of like instant serotonin rushes, and especially younger audiences that used to be the Star Wars gimmies, like the 12 to 18-year-olds that would go to watch Star Wars in the theaters and want to be Luke and Skywalker. I think they're gone. They don't want to stream the stuff as much anymore because they all became content creators. I
really hate that every time we talk about media, like the stepping stones of A leads to B leads to D leads to the death of society is not that many steps.
No, we're real close.
I really freaking hate that every single time because like every single time I start thinking about short form content, I just get really upset because like it's destroying everyone's attention spans. It's destroying everyone's interest in literally anything. We're all just like brain rot was the word of the year last year, I think, right? Wasn't it the word of the year? Webster's word of the
I think so.
It should
somebody does that. I think it was last year, or maybe I just made that up.
Why isn't it like calcitrant? Like, come on, Webster's, help us out.
Substrate calcite.
That's this year. That's this year.
I have seen.
Yeah, Oxford was brain rot. Oxford Dictionary. Brain rot.
I did not make that up. Hell yes. All right, that was real. Yeah,
I get why they do it. I get why they do it because they have to accurately reflect the moment. But
do you want
Oxford?
Do you want to
save the world?
Do you want to guess what the American Dialect Society used for word of the year in 2024?
2024. How is that different? Is it just American based?
Yeah, I guess it's raw dog. I don't know why, but that's on there.
Well, we've we have now uttered the word.
Ourselves. We don't know how to do it.
That's it, guys. Sorry, that was it.
Oh no, Wes and Eric leaves. We'll just have to raw dog the show. That's what... Eric is leaving. He's gone.
All right, Corey. Shirts off.
Shirts off.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Wheel us back in here.
Tony, we're so sorry. We've been trying to tell us.
Yes, if streaming may be dead, but so are our attention spans, and so are like the minds of children. Like, I know that we're getting older and older, and there are probably, if there are ever younger people that, I don't know if younger people listen to our show. If there are younger people listen to our show, like we are certainly entering the back in my day era, like of age. I turned 32 last week, and I certainly feel like I am entering the back in my day era. I see Gen Alpha kids do stuff, and I'm just like, I don't understand how you're going to function in society. Honestly, they will literally have an iPad, a phone, and a computer all at one time and be watching content on all three at the same time. And I'm just like, this cannot be good for our brain's development. No. Like, truly. It just truly can't.
And yet, we still just got Andor, which is a long-form, intense, political, non-referential piece of content, and it was lauded. Like,
but was it successful, Eric? That's the question.
It'll never happen again. I think that's the key, is that if streaming is dead, this cannot be replicated because this was 24 episodes, 24-hour-long episodes with a $700 million budget for all of it. And in the future, this would probably be about a $280 million movie. And which
I guess
it could be a
primetime show, I guess, or an HBO show. But is that era dead too? Are we dead?
No, that era is fine, but that era is way cheaper. There's nothing that's expensive on those. Like, as far as sci-fi and that kind of stuff is never translated to the prestige.
Game of Thrones is the closest we've ever gotten.
Yes.
and it was insanely expensive, but still, Andor was more expensive than that.
And no one else. And then we tried to have a few copycats afterwards, but I don't know. I think if streaming is truly dead, as they told Tony, one, I want to give credit where credit is due. If this was said and Kathleen Kennedy still wrote the check to make Andor season 2, Kathy, I already loved you. You're a queen. This is amazing. We're like, we don't have the, if you're like, we don't have the money, but I don't care. Here you go. That's baller. I love, if that's one of the last things you do before you retire, hell yeah. But I think if we get rid of live action Star Wars, which is, I think is what's happening. I think we're going back to the movies. That's also what we had for 40 years, for 30 years. Like, I think animation is way cheaper. They'll always have Star Wars animation. This mall show is going to go on. I think they're going to keep doing that. But if we just have animated TV and live action movies, that was most of it. You know, we had 6 years, 5-6 years of a little experiment, and wasn't that fun? Is what I truly think is going to happen.
But let's say
interesting.
Our Star Wars sets in the future are going to be cheaper. You don't need that high budget because you have AI creating the sets for you.
And you got the volume, and that's
so.
I think that's already being pushed back against a little bit.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
At least the CG and the AI is still not going to be there for another decade, in my opinion. At least to be one, socially acceptable in society, and I mean the corporations are going to force it down our throats whether we want it or not.
Yeah, true.
And two, just we're approaching diminishing returns with AI. Like the video is getting better, but like every time they release a new update, it's like less better than the previous update. You know what I mean? Like the gap is smaller every single time. And I don't know. I know all the, you know, I follow the AI community pretty closely and the technology pretty closely, and like I know that the tech bros are just absolutely nuts and rabid every time there's a new update. But like, I don't know if we're going to get to a place in soon enough, I think, for the storytelling to happen
soon
to where
enough.
Like we can truly do it. Like, I mean, Tarkin looked amazing in Rogue One, right?
Yeah.
Like when we CG an entire character now, like in Mandalorian, like a mocap character, it looked good, but the gap between Tarkin and Mandalorian mocap CGI characters, like, it's not a huge gap. You know what I mean? Like it's like,
and also
it's like, all right,
way
it's
more
definitely
work
better
than it needed to be, because like that guy looked like Mark Hamill. I don't know why. It's cheaper to hire the actor.
We went through all that trouble to do that, and like it looked good, but it didn't look like, holy shit, I can't even believe this was made in the same decade as Tarkin. You know what I mean? It was a little bit better, but I think that's how AI is going to feel. And
now,
if that does,
it hasn't been around that long. It has not been around that long, and it's come leaps and bounds from, like, since it went public for people to use, and now it's the shortest time span between any kind of technological advancement. So give it
insanely. The
5-10
rate
years.
is insanely fast. 5-10 years, maybe. That's what I'm saying, though. In the next 10 years, though, you know, I'm not sure that in 10 years we're going to be having the conversation about streaming and movies and TV. It's going to be something different entirely. Well, because you also hear,
regardless of AI, regardless of whatever the crap's going on with all the tech, like every studio head has been like, we're going to make less content and be more intentional about it. Like Marvel said that. Like Star Wars is saying that. Like, I completely agree, and I think that there is less stories that are at a higher caliber. I think is what we're seeing. Yeah.
I hope so. I will say this is insanely negative. I can't even say this on the show. I frankly right now I have no faith that that's possible. Like based on the current trajectory, because I feel like if streaming is really dead, I think streaming kind of had to die, because the quality of all the content, I think, took a major dip from the films.
Yes.
And like as a net average, right?
There's exceptions to every rule.
Well, as an average, I think Andor brought it way up. I think like some of Mandalorian maybe brought it way down. Book of Boba Fett, it's a safe answer. Book of Boba Fett brought it way down, right? But like, you know, so we'll see. I agree. I hope they are more intentional about it, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll believe it when I see it. Until we get something else that's even on the same planet as the quality of Andor.
Yeah.
I'll be cautiously optimistic. I think is a good way to think about it.
Yeah, which we have said they can blow up and explode at any time. Planets.
We'll find out. But I will say, if you're wondering, you should probably buy those Andor Blu-rays if we want that to hang around, because I think there may be a day where they just say, "All right, we tried," and you're gonna want that. So
unplug it. I know.
Oh.
Exactly.
Fortunately, the pirate community is never going to die. So
well, not that we would ever endorse such
piracy,
things on our show, but that is also very
raw
true.
dogging, any other controversial topics we can
All
bring
right, everybody.
up.
Before we leave for the evening, we thought it would be nice to preserve my sanity by taking just a couple minutes to look ahead to next Tuesday, because aside from all the visual media of Star Wars, we are going to receive one of the most important Star Wars projects in the last 4 years with Trials of the Jedi, the final adult novel of the High Republic Initiative. Our full review is going to be out on the site on release day next Tuesday, but initial reactions are spreading online, and I just have to ask, fellas, how are you feeling about this now that the day is almost here?
I, funny enough, feel more motivated to go back and read stuff now than I ever have.
Love it.
Which is fun.
Good.
We've been talking a little bit about it on the team because I obviously in West 2, I guess we both kind of fell off at Phase 2, and I've kind of thought about going back, but like I think I reached the point somewhere during Phase 3 where I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do anything until they finish the whole thing, and then I'll have everyone can have an objective opinion about the whole thing. I'm actually kind of considering doing what I did with the first book I ever read, which was the last book in the 9-book trilogy. It was the first Star Wars book I ever read. I'm actually considering just reading this book by itself just now, even with no context, and just seeing what that experience is like, because it does allegedly do a lot of recapping. So, the team likes it too, right? I mean, we can't talk too much about it.
I can say non-spoiler stuff because the embargo is up. It's phenomenal. It's very, very, very phenomenal. They absolutely nailed it. Charles Soule coming back. He's only gotten better as a novelist, and Light of the Jedi I thought was pretty perfect in itself. So full thoughts next week, but I'm interested in that because it is definitely an end, a solid end of it. And I guess on that I want to ask you guys, because next week I think we can go a little granular and we'll see what happens. Obviously, we'll bring you guys all the news as it comes. But I feel like we're going to talk a little bit more in the specifics of the High Republic. But looking back at the last 4 years, if this is the end of the High Republic publishing initiative, obviously it is an era now in canon forever. That's established. What do you think the biggest success of the High Republic was? And what do you think was the biggest struggle of the High Republic? If you're in the meeting with Mike Seglain and all the architects, you're kind of doing your, okay, we did it. What do we think? Biggest success and biggest struggle?
That's a great question.
I think I'll start. I mean, I think their biggest success was their first book. I think the breakup of Starlight. What is it? It's not Starlight Beacon that broke up. It was right. Okay, yeah.
Oh no, first book. Legacy Run.
Yes.
Legacy Run.
Oh, yeah. The breakup in hyperspace that just completely demolished different ships and planets and everything. I think that was incredible because the beginning of it got everybody into it. And it created
a strong pilot.
All new characters, something that at the very end of the book, it wanted us to read more. So I think that was a huge plus.
Yes.
I think Phase 2 was a struggle. I think going back in time was tough for people because they already found out what was happening in Phase 1. They was like, it has to be something huge in Phase 2 to make Phase 1 that we had already read worth it. That's where I kind of fell off, was after I read everything from Phase 2, I was just like, I don't know. I wasn't as invested as I was in Phase 1. So that was kind of a struggle for me. Maybe not the biggest struggle for the High Republic as a whole, but I mean, for me, as my opinion, I would say Phase 2 as a whole was a struggle.
I think I agree with both of your points, Wes. For the sake of argument, I'll have different points. I think I definitely agree with your points that both of those were enormous successes and struggles. I would maybe expand the biggest success outside of just the first book, maybe to the entire first phase. I felt like it was a very successful. It was interesting. It felt big. It felt like they cared about the books. The powers that be. It felt like they cared about the books, and like we were like finally getting some amazing content. Like I guess it felt like we suddenly matter, like the fan community around the books. Like I think just the energy around the High Republic was a massive success in phase one. Yeah, I would say biggest struggle. I do actually agree that I think the like going back in time for phase two was maybe even just a blanket a horrible mistake. Actually, not even just like the biggest struggle. I think that was a disaster, frankly. But I would say maybe the biggest struggle would maybe be that if we learn some gigantic lessons from these types of huge initiatives like this, I think that most of us on the Youtini team kind of agree that it was very challenging to jump between mediums for continuity of storytelling. Yes. I think that was like, and admittedly that became much less of a problem as time went on. I think they kind of figured that out rather quickly. It feels like the end of phase two and phase three especially, like was more like the comics have got the story, the books have kind of got their stories. It felt like that was a little more figured out, like by the end of the High Republic. But man, that was a pain in the rear end during phase one, even of like, holy crap, how do we even follow this? Like, and it was hard for the fans to put together our recommended reading too. And they didn't really do a great job of putting together recommended reading either, because there's multiple publishers involved and it was kind of messy at times. And yeah, it was hard. It was hard to kind of put all that together. I would say that the disconnect in mediums was quite challenging for fans.
Yeah. I will take that and jump off a little bit to say that the biggest success and the biggest struggle were the exact same thing in that regard. I think the biggest success is, I agree with everything Wes said as well. I think the start of it was great. Corey, like that, you said phase one, amazing. Like we truly haven't seen anything like it in Star Wars.
It's really fun.
Which was really beautiful. But the greatest success, I think, was being able to tell a story across a bunch of different mediums. That was amazing. Like to see Keith Trennis jump from comics and be talked about in books, and then Avar Kriss being shown in comics after starting in a novel. Like that's really great. That's really hard. But they did it. I think that was really cool. But also the biggest struggle was that each phase handled it differently. Like in phase one, it was all a little interconnected. In phase three, it became almost so not connected that if for folks that were keeping up with everything, you had so many completely different storylines going on that it became hard to figure out, which made me realize I don't think there was a way for perfect success. I think if it was completely tied into all the mediums, you had to read everything to follow along, and that became too hard. But then I also realized if it was completely different, then I felt like, well, some didn't matter and some did, and that became really hard. So unfortunately, I don't think there was a perfect storm for that to happen. Not their fault necessarily. But then I will also say the biggest strength was at the start. The connection with the creators to the fan community was unparalleled. Everyone
it was good energy, man.
It was such great energy. And then they just gave up on it. And
kind of burned out, yeah.
And not really with any sort of like letter to the fans. Like, yes, it started out, we had Christina Ariel during the High Republic show. We had interviews with Kevin and Daniel and Justina and Claudia and Charles. And then they just stopped producing it. Yeah. And then all the authors fled social media. And then and then we still had a phase and a half to go. Like we still had to do all this stuff.
The pandemic was very harmful for the entire publishing industry. Yeah. Right.
Well, it couldn't start off until the end of it, and we thought that would carry on, and it just
I think it was a bit too bold. I think at times, and it still comes down to like how do we measure success, because like we don't know if they consider this successful or not. It kind of feels like they don't. But otherwise, maybe they would have put a little more energy into the end and marketing and stuff. But I think the question to ask is like, you know, however many books there are, I'm just going to make up numbers. You know, of the 50 novels in YA novels, say 50, I don't know. Of the 50 books we had, you know, there was probably 100 comics. I don't know, maybe more than that.
Tons of content.
Yeah, 100 books. Let's say 100 comics and 50 books, if that's what it was. I mean, it was way more than that. I started to try to actually pull up the database so I could look, but it was going to be there's so many. Of the 100 comics and 50 books, if we had not done the High Republic and we had just published what we called early canon on the Youtini publishing timeline, basically. Early canon. We had continued with that model. We had published 50 books and 100 comics using that model, which would have been like, there's a couple trilogies, there's like a bunch of independent books, there's some connections to the films, some connections to live action TV now. Like maybe that was that's how we publish books. Like we got Phasma, we got the random Han Solo book, we got that sort of model, right?
Yeah.
Like if we had done that instead of the High Republic, would we have sold as many books? Would we have sold as many comics? Would we have
definitely not
had as big of a social media push? Would the community have been united? I think once you think about that model, like it's pretty hard to argue that it was a failure because
there are so many fans of Star Wars that came in through the High Republic now, like that are
books too, just
books
straight up
like,
books and comics that they got into books because of the High Republic. I see that on Reddit actually fairly frequently.
100%.
So like I think once you look at it that way, that like yes, it did kind of taper off, and yes, we were all very disappointed when they canceled the High Republic show, and
yes,
we're still pretty bummed with the authors feel very burnt out and kind of jaded about a lot of things.
It seemed really hard.
It seemed really hard.
Yes.
It's easier for us to be like, it sucks. Maybe it wasn't that good. But like, as soon as you consider the alternative, what they could have done instead, it's like, oh no, I'm glad we did this instead. Like this was the way. This was the better thing to do with our time and energy and investment. Right. So
there are lessons to be learned for sure, like any project. But I think it is such a cool thing to have happened. And again, like, we'll give you the full details next week. But Trials of the Jedi nails it, and it shows why the High Republic was so special. And I guess the last question I have for you guys as we kind of round out, based on knowing absolutely nothing, how does the High Republic get brought into canon going forward in an organic way? Like we've seen it pop up in like Jedi and like Jedi Survivor, and like they mentioned like relics of the High Republic. Like, does it just become kind of a conversation piece? Do we every once in a while get a book like the Darth Bane trilogy when this is an Old Republic book? Do we just get a random trilogy in the High Republic every once in a while? Like, how do they treat it, do you think?
That's a good freaking question. I mean, I don't think they've figured this out yet. Like, they're not good at this.
Not yet, for sure.
Like,
no.
like this, it's the same problem with like, how do we organically fit in the First Order? Like, into it's just like, I don't know. They haven't freaking figured that out yet. And The Force Awakens is a decade old now. So like, they still haven't figured that shit out. So I don't know how we do it. I think what we're doing now is probably the best we're going to get for a while. If we ever get an original game that takes place in the era, which is never going to happen.
Star Wars
is
Eclipse?
Not a real game. You cannot convince
the internet tells me
game.
It's being made, Corey.
Cannot.
What's going to bring that up?
I cannot be convinced that Eclipse is a real game. I think it's a lie. I think it's a scam. I think we're going to find out that the studio doesn't actually exist. Like, no, this is all it's all fake. It's a fake Kickstarter campaign. That's what it is. You can't convince me otherwise. I mean, maybe with that. I honestly don't think we're going to touch it for a long time. That kind of sucks. But I think the era is going to be sort of
there'll be a bit
locked up behind a.
Yeah, they need to let it marinate for sure.
Yeah.
I think I'm with you. I think that it's going to become like when people say like, oh, Old Republic credits or something, like they'll mention, oh, the High Republic, whatever. I don't think, Charles Soule is still a pretty big part of the Star Wars creative team. Like, he's still writing the Kylo Ren comic right now, Legacy of Vader, and he's got, I forget his title, but he does have an official job at Star Wars in like story group-esque. So they're going to throw in High Republic stuff in the comics and things like that. I think it is now very solidly a part of Star Wars lore. I think it will be a while before we get another book firmly set in there. We do have the Acolyte Crystal Crown book coming out, but that's, again, an Acolyte tie-in this summer. Yeah, I think then you take your time. You had 4 years of stories of it. Like, every single month there was either a comic or a book of the High Republic for 4 years. That's amazing. Like, what a great thing that existed, and now we'll take some time, and I really think that we move forward. But this is, for all of our little issues here and there, and for the momentum that trailed off as time went on, I think it was definitely something really special and a success. And next week, we will tell you just how much. I will say for now, though, get your pre-orders in. Go over to the site. If you pre-order through our links, it does help us out a little bit, which we super appreciate. And we'll, of course, bring you all the news next week as we celebrate the last novel, High Republic. There's some comics that'll come out here and there, but believe me when I tell you this is going to be a nice end for all of us fans. But that'll have to wait till next week because, my friends, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Youtini Show. Thanks so much for hanging out and talking Star Wars. We will be back with everything that's going on. In the meantime, make sure to follow us on all the socials to make sure that you get your Star Wars every single day. Until next week, my name's Eric. I've been here with Corey and Wes. And as always, may the Force be with you.